Hi. Today we're going to work with circular needles. And the big thing with there are several things with circular needles, but the big thing with circular needles is they're just convenient. You don't have to, if you have two separate sticks, as my dad calls them, you can lose one, misplace it. But when you have circular needles, everything's attached, including your project to your needles. So that's one thing I really like about circular needles. The other thing I like about them is there are so many patterns available to you that you can make on circular needles, including huge afghans. I am going to show you a few tips and tricks today, and then we're going to go ahead and start a scarf. So let's talk about our needles first. Now, when you use circular needles, a lot of times they come in a package wrapped like this. And so once you unravel them, a lot of times this kink does not go away. So this is, these are, oh, what are these? I can't remember. They're Knitter's Pride, and I can't remember the name of them. Anyway, they're very nice needles, and these are not interchangeables. These I use for socks. But in order to get the kinks out so that they don't drive you batty and get in your way all the time, there is a trick you can do. Now, this pink cable that I have here, this is one of my knit picks, and it was wrapped very tightly. So what I did was I took a bowl of boiling water, well, not boiling, but hot water. I just made some tea for my husband and I, and we drank it. And by the time we went back to it, the water had cooled down enough that I put my cable in a bowl of hot water, and now you can see it's really softened up quite a bit. The other thing is CircularNeedleKnitting, a very nice needle company, very expensive needle company. We dream of CircularNeedleKnitting, has a cable, and it's a clear cable. It's not their red or their blue cable. They have red and blue cables that come in their sets. But this cable actually has no memory to it. And so if you're brand new and you want to learn how to use circular needles without the hassle of dealing with the cable getting in your way, the CircularNeedleKnitting is very nice. I just sent a needle made with the CircularNeedleKnitting. It's a CircularNeedleKnitting needle made with their non-memory cable, and to my granddaughter, and I hope that helps her because she's not happy with, I don't think. Okay, so these are a size 8. And I think this is a 24-inch cable. It's a bigger than what I need. You could actually get away with a 16, but I like the bigger needles because then I can do what we call a magic loop, which means I can have my knitting just on part of the needle, and I can do any size I want. See, that's already starting to close up. But I'm used to circular needles, so it's not a problem for me. Okay, the other thing that I'm going to talk to you about is this homespun yarn. A lot of people don't like homespun because it is textured. Now, I really like homespun for certain things. I made one sweater out of it, and it was okay. But what I really love homespun for is to make scarves, and especially when I'm teaching brand new knitters to knit, I'll generally start them out on this if I think they can handle it. If I don't think they can handle it, a lot of times I'll just start on a smoother yarn, so that, because as you're knitting, sometimes these bumps can get in the way. But if you're just learning to do the knit stitch, this is perfect because it doesn't really look like a stockinette or even a garter stitch. It just looks like these bumps are just built into the scarf. So it makes a very nice first project for beginning knitters. Plus, the thing about that scarf is if you're using it with your circular needles, it gives you time to work through one whole project and get used to your circular needles and how they work. So let's go ahead and talk about the yarn just a little bit more. When you buy yarn, it comes a lot of times like this with a tail that's wrapped around, but then it has a tail oops, that's another project I'm working on. It has a tail that's inside of your yarn. And a lot of times I will try and find that inside yarn so that I can pull from the inside. So if I have the two, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this, and then I'm going to hide it under the paper wrapping and kind of show you just to hide it, to get it out of the way so I don't knit with it. Now, Homespun says to use a size 10 knitting needle. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use an 8 for this, and that will work just fine. 10 actually is what I used for this one. But because I sent my granddaughter one of the Chow Goos in a size 8, I'm going to go ahead and use this with her so that she can kind of follow along. And you can follow along too. If you have a size 10, use it. That's great. Okay, so I always put my yarn to my right-hand side because I'm right-handed. And so I want my working yarn to come from the right-hand side. And with this pattern, I'm going to go ahead and cast on, let's not make it terribly big, but let's go ahead and do our first cast on. You've seen me do this. I go ahead and make a little tail between two of my fingers. I hold it with my thumb. I wrap it once, and the second time I pull back with my ring finger. Then I go ahead and grab. I put my needle under the first one and I grab the top one and I pull it, and I'll pull it just a little bit tight. So we do want to ignore the tail. So I'm going to hold the tail with my needle, and then we're just going to cast on like we usually do for a stretchy knit. There are lots of cast-ons, and I do have some videos showing you how to cast on other cast-ons, but for things I'm making that need stretchy cast-ons, this is my go-to. So we go ahead and put our needle as if we're going to knit. We wrap it from back to front, grab that, and then we take our left-hand needle underneath and transfer the stitch to the left-hand needle. So I have 3. Let's do 4. And you'll see me do this also. I will go ahead and wrap. And once I get it like this, I'll separate it with my fingers, and then I can put my needle in. It's up to you, however you want to do that. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to count on 20, and then I'm going to see what that looks like. I don't know if that's going to be enough cast-ons. Oops. See, you have to be just a little bit careful with this yarn. It does split. But if you take your needle and roll it up the other needle, put the tip of your needle and rub it against this as you're going through your stitch, you generally won't get that split. So I've lost track again. So get my mouth going, my brain shuts off. 2, 4, 6, 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. And you can see my cable is kind of staying out of the way better since I heated it up and straightened it out. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and you don't want to pull these too tight. You want to be able to knit with it easily. 20. Let's look at that. You know, that might, it would be a thin scarf, but it would be long Let's go ahead and just do 20. You can do 24, you can do 30 if you want. One skein won't do a scarf if you do 30. So I'm going to start knitting, and again, you want to make sure that your yarn is on the right hand side. We're not going to work in circles today. We're just going to kind of get comfortable with our circular needles. There's one stitch. Now, you'll see me. I make sure that I get my stitches separated, especially with this yarn, because it's very hard to see where one wrap ends and the other one begins. So this one you kind of want to see, like right now they're together, so I kind of try to push them apart with my fingers and knit. And I do this, my tension's not real tight. This is a good project to also kind of learn how not to get your tension terribly tight when you're knitting. This really does make a beautiful scarf. Okay, so we've gotten one row finished. So you can kind of see as you knit with this, this would be a very difficult yarn to be able to see if you're on a knit or a purl side. So this is a yarn that would be a perfect project for something that you're going to knit stitch on both sides. And sometimes you've seen me, I slip my first stitch. Because this is such a nubby textured fabric that I'm making, I don't worry about making a really nice straight edge with this one. I just worry about doing the knitting work. And you can see after the first row, if you've not tightened your tension up terribly, it just goes a lot easier. The stitches start to separate nicer. They come off your yarn, your needles better. And it is really starting to take shape. So let's go ahead and knit a few rows together just so you can kind of see how pretty this is going to be. And I'm using lighter colored needles. You've seen me. I have both a dark set and a light set of interchangeable needles. And since my yarn is so dark, I've chosen the lighter Sunstroke, they're called, Knit Picks needles, because I can see the contrast and it makes knitting them. Now if I had used a darker needle inside of this, a bigger darker needle than this, inside of it, it would have been harder to see the stitches. So that's another thing that you might want to think about if you really like knitting and you want to have some options. Having a light and a dark color of needle is very helpful. I do want to say about the CircularNeedleKnitting, the ones that I sent are not interchangeable. They are fixed circular needles, and they are also bamboo, which bamboo is a nice wood to knit with. I have quite a few old bamboo needles that I have used down through the years, and I have to admit they actually hold up very well. Sometimes you'll find with these really fancy wooden needles like this, unless it's a hard wood, if it's a softer wood, sometimes you will get little splinters. Now there is something you can do, and you've probably seen me use this with some of my paper projects that we make. You can actually kind of smooth those down with a piece of sandpaper, and once you're done smoothing it down, I wouldn't just let the bare wood. I would either put some kind of beeswax on it to soften, to really smooth it out and to protect your wood, or you could even use some clear nail polish, a very good clear nail polish, and that would protect the tips of your needles. Okay, you can see I'm not having any trouble with this cable since I heated it up. And that's something I suggest if you do have the very strong memory cables that want to just twist into circles while you're knitting. If you take your cable and put it in hot water and just let it sit for a while. Don't put your needles in, just put your cable in, especially if you have wooden needles. Just put your cable in and let it sit for maybe 30, 45 seconds. Take it out and stretch it out on your countertop. And then you don't have to actually roll these back up to store them. I have seen where lots of ladies have taken their cables and done just this to them. They've heated them up and gotten them pretty well straightened out, and so that it doesn't get more memory in it, they've hung them with something like this. A lot of them just do it on their curtains, or they have a small curtain rod that they hang up. You can actually put a piece of yarn across two little command stickies and just hang your cables from one end and let them hang down straight, and then they don't start to get that memory. For example, I would take my knitting needle off, but I would go ahead and just clip it like that, and then I would clip it onto something and let the weight of this just hang down. And then you don't have the issue with the memory in your cable for your interchangeables. I do like fixed circulars. As you can see, this is a fixed circular, and most of the time I use these for knitting socks. If you get an very expensive Chow Goose set, it will take you down to a small enough size that you can knit socks with interchangeables. But most sets do not go down small enough for sock needles. They go from a size 4 up to usually an 11 in the sets. So for those of you who have a dream wish, Chow Goose are a fabulous needle, and maybe someday if I keep knitting I might get myself a pair. For now, my next choice would be the Knit Picks. These are excellent needles. There's nothing wrong with them. And then I also like Knitter's Pride. If you look those up on the internet, you'll find lots of needles, lots of choices for both Knitter's Pride and for Knit Picks. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at our fabric. Isn't that looking just, it's luscious. And like I said, you can't tell what's a knit or a purl side. These are both knit sides, so we're getting the garter stitch. But because of the bumps, it doesn't have that strange look. Here, let me go through and show you this. See, for example, it's a little bit odd when you do just a knit and a purl, knit on both sides. You get the lumps. You don't get the pretty design. So this is an excellent yarn for people who just want to knit a beautiful scarf. It doesn't take any time at all because this is a heavier yarn and it works up very quickly. We've only done like 4 rows and we already have about an inch of fabric made. So it's something that if you want a quick gift for Christmas or someone's birthday, this makes a beautiful gift. These homespun yarn scarves. Plus, like I said, if you are willing to deal with your cables, this is a good way to get used to knitting with circular needles. And I would suggest that you take the time to knit yourself a scarf or a present for Christmas. Put it away. I know it's early in the season, but you could put it away in your closet and wrap it up and put someone's name on it, and you have a Christmas present made, and it will take you no time at all to knit up this homespun. Like I said, I think this is considered a bulky. Let me look. This is Montana Sky, by the way. It's actually very beautiful. Yes, this is a bulky. It's considered a bulky. And that's why generally you do want to use a size 10 needle. But like I said, I sent a size 8 to my granddaughter because you can do so much with an 8. and it really doesn't hurt. It just makes your fabric a little bit tighter if you use a size 8 needle for the homespun yarn. Okay, I am on my 6th round, and we have just been sitting here talking, and you can see my cable is not getting in my way. It's just laying flat. No matter how I turn it, it lays fairly flat. So those of you who are having trouble with your circular needles, please try this little trick. Heat it up in some very warm water, not boiling, but very warm. Don't put your wooden needles tips in, but just put the cable in, let it soak for about 30 to 45 seconds again, and then straighten it out. Straighten it out and hold it for a while, or like I said, you can use my little tip of these little office clips. I have these ones. I have some other ones. I don't know where they are. But any kind of little clip that you can clip onto your cable and then hang it so that the weight keeps pulling down your cable. They do start to have memory. If you keep them wrapped up, they will start to get more and more circular. And see, even though I've heated this one up, I've had these for probably 10-15 years. And even though I've heated it up, it's not straight anymore like it was when I first did it. It's starting to curl up because it has gotten some memory on it, because I keep mine wrapped up. I don't have a problem with the cables. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you just keep knitting. Knit, 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 knit each side. And I would love to see some of your pictures. You're welcome to put them down in the comments. But this is a nice yarn. It's acrylic and it's cheaper, but it's beautiful. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this has helped you with your circular needles and a few little tips and tricks. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.